In urgent news, the Ukrainian armed forces are preparing a massive strike on Moscow and Engels. The Czech Republic is supplying Ukraine with the latest missiles. A military apocalypse. Norway is marking a target on Russia's Murmansk. The Ukrainian armed forces are breaking through enemy defenses, and Italian self-propelled artillery is returning to the front after a 2-year pause. The Ukrainian armed forces are deploying a secret superweapon against Russian KBs. The general staff is keeping things under wraps. An iron monster that will change the rules of the game is ready for deployment. A drone party deep inside Russia. Ukrainian UAVs are sowing chaos across the entire Russian Federation. All this and more coming up. Watch until the end. Ukraine welcomes you today. Renata Slanov here with the latest updates. Russians, get ready. The Czech Republic will deliver to the armed forces of Ukraine the latest artillery systems for strikes on Moscow and Engels. At the beginning of next year, Ukraine may receive modern missiles and drones produced in the Czech Republic, which could significantly impact the course of the Russian-Ukrainian war. Thus, the Czech Republic has unveiled a new cruise missile called Narwhal, which they plan to supply to Ukraine for strikes on targets in Russia. The developer is already conducting tests, and the final stage will be its evaluation in combat conditions. Experts clarify that the Narwhal is designed for a range of 680 kilometers, which is enough to strike targets deep behind enemy lines, including Moscow or the strategic Engels air base. The missile is capable of flying at a speed of 750 kilometers per hour and carrying a warhead weighing 120 kilograms. That's more than what pensioners get. For example, the Iranian-Russian Shahed has a payload of 50 to 90 kilograms, which makes the Narwhal much more effective against a wide range of targets. One of its key advantages is its modern guidance system. In addition to GPS and inertial navigation, the missile is equipped with its own visual orientation system. Thanks to this, the Narwhal can operate even without satellite communication and under active Russian electronic warfare. Experts compare the Narwhal to another Czech development, the Barracuda 500M. Although the Barracuda is cheaper, it falls short in most characteristics. It has a shorter range, weaker guidance, and a warhead that's half as heavy. But it's not just this missile that can become a nightmare for the enemy. The Norwegian government has announced new investments in the country's defense and will allocate 19 billion kroner for the purchase of a new ground-based missile system for the land forces, which will have a range of 500 kilometers. The acquisition of such a system has been called a strategically important initiative and will significantly increase the Army's strike capability. At the same time, as noted, the 500-kilometer range is necessary for Norway not just for its own sake, but to enable strikes on key targets in the Russian Federation region. And such a range allows them to keep in their sights Murmansk, which is the main port in the Russian Federation region, as well as the main Russian naval bases and air bases, including the well-known Olenia. It has become known that after a 2-year break, the ISO may receive Italian M109L self-propelled artillery systems. 2 years ago, Italy delivered about 100 of these self-propelled artillery systems to Ukraine. This week, an Italian military analyst reported on social media about the resumption of deliveries of self-propelled artillery systems. The report emphasizes that this is the first batch of M109L self-propelled artillery systems in 2 years. According to him, it was not easy to bring the artillery systems into working condition. In addition, the F-16 fighter jets in service with Ukraine have likely started shooting down Russian Shaheds using the inexpensive and effective APKWS-2 missiles. This was reported by the Defense Express portal.
This is very good news because the Ukrainian Air Force has finally received one of the best methods for countering UAVs, perfectly fitting the phrase cheap and cheerful. This will allow them to use fewer AIM-9 and AIM-120 missiles, which cost millions of dollars each.
Ukraine is also deploying a secret superweapon against Russian KBs. Ukrainian defense is preparing a response that could change the rules of the game. The General Staff of Ukraine reported that the defense forces are taking effective measures to reduce the effectiveness of Russian-guided aerial bombs. In particular, new weaponry is being tested against cabs, according to Defense Express.
The implementation and scaling of innovations is effective when it increases the capabilities of our troops.
The General Staff is keeping the intrigue going until the very end. They are not revealing exactly which iron monster is being tested. Whether it is an entirely new system or a modernization of existing means remains unknown. It's a closely guarded secret. And here's another piece of good news. Ukraine and Norway are launching a joint combat drone factory. Starting in 2026, a joint production line for strike and reconnaissance drones will be launched, which will become a nightmare for the occupiers. This was announced by the Minister of Defense of Ukraine.
This is an important step that will allow us to scale up our capabilities and strengthen Ukraine's defense. The next stage is to quickly deploy a pilot production line in 2026. and at the same time, work on further increasing production capacity.
An explosion deep inside Russia. Drones and Su aircraft carried out unimaginable revenge. The Kremlin is in panic. One of the key Z military bloggers admitted to a shameful exposure. The world's second-largest army can't even provide its soldiers with socks. A complete collapse in front of the whole world. But this is only the beginning of the collapse of Putin's front. All the shocking details and footage from the front line. Watch now.
Drones in Russia's Engels. There are an airfield and an oil depot belonging to the occupiers there. Drones also reached Volgograd, causing a strong reaction among the local residents.
What are you doing?
For 13.
There are people who got hit here, but none of the problems are causing any issues.
The occupiers near the Belgorod border are having restless nights. Meanwhile, as Ukrainians attack Russian military targets, the latter in turn continue to shell peaceful Ukrainian civilians. This video shows the aftermath of a nighttime attack on Chernihiv, Ukraine. Russian troops attacked Oktyrka in the Sumy region. Hits were recorded on the roof and wall of one of the apartments in a 9-story building. At the same time, US President Donald Trump, who has taken it upon himself to broker peace between Russia and Ukraine, claims that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is allegedly not ready to accept a peace plan, if it can even be called that.
According to US law, which was enacted back in 2017 during Trump's presidency and signed by Trump himself, the United States will not recognize any territories that Russia has annexed from Ukraine since 2014. Because once again, there is a corresponding law. In other words, if you want to do what's written in this plan to recognize Russian territory, you first need to change your domestic legislation. Your own law prohibits you from doing this. So here, not only is the initiator of the proposal external, but without the expertise of the State Department and Congress, it's illegal. And even the proposals within these very points themselves, they also contradict US law.
There's a clear example of how Trump knows how to make deals. After the conflict was settled by the US president, clashes broke out on the border between Thailand and Cambodia. Numerous murders, rapes, and other crimes in the African country of Mali are being committed by militants from the African Corps, which is subordinate to the Russian Ministry of Defense. And it replaced Wagner. Accordingly, knowing the treachery of the Russians, no one can guarantee that Ukraine won't face a repeat of the conflict.
No other security guarantee more effective than strengthening Ukraine's defense forces can be given to us by anyone. So, the only thing we can do in terms of security guarantees is to strengthen our army, not reduce it. And in terms of peace, we see that there are intentions to reduce the size of Ukraine's army.
The son and namesake of the American president, Donald Trump Jr., does not rule out that his father may distance himself from Russia's war against Ukraine if attempts to achieve peace are unsuccessful.
Russia supports peace talks only for one purpose: to persuade the US to stop further aid to Ukraine. And at the very least, to minimize it, because the war that Russia was expected to win, first and foremost in Russia, but also in the West, within 4 days, to capture Kiev and all of Ukraine in 2 months, has now been going on for almost 4 years. And to genuinely suggest that Russia is currently achieving any significant success would be far, far too optimistic indeed for Russia to claim at this particular moment.
The so-called conquerors are going into Ukraine barefoot and barehanded, and they're the ones saying it themselves.
3.5 years of war. Really? Is that possible? We can't even centrally supply our army with underwear and socks?
Apparently, the Russian command simply doesn't see the point in spending money on their soldiers, who are eliminated almost instantly. And to cover up the losses of the dead, they record them as deserters. The partisans are the ones talking about this. Despite the problems in Vovchansk, Siversk, Mirnorod and Pokrovsk caused by the intense pressure from Russian forces, Donbas is holding on, according to Ukrainian war correspondents. Kupiansk is being shelled, but it still stands. Here, the Russian army is also taking a beating from the Ukrainian armed forces.
Shock. The Kremlin and India are preparing a drone bomb against the world. Moscow is openly offering a generous package of bonuses, technology and combat experience in exchange for joint production of deadly drones. What does this mean for Ukraine, and what threats does the drone alliance between the Kremlin and New Delhi pose? All the sensational details are coming up next.
Good afternoon.
The Russian Federation is becoming increasingly dependent on India. Modi and Putin have decided to go into business together. I know
That in India they say, we will go together, we will grow together.
Russia is actively expanding its cooperation and seeking to establish joint production of drones. This is stated in a new report by the American Institute for the Study of War.
The Kremlin is considering expanding joint weapons production in India to include drones, which Russia will very likely use on the battlefield. In Ukraine, possibly in exchange for Russian technological innovations and lessons learned in Ukraine.
This was also confirmed by Sergei Chemezov, head of the Russian state corporation Rostec.
We have made proposals, we have sent our suggestions. Regarding the Su-57, Russia is ready to offer localization of production as well. They said, we'll think about it.
Moscow is negotiating with Delhi about localizing the production of Russian drones, including strike Lancets, on Indian territory.
Guys, let's just not talk about this topic.
The day before, in an interview with India Today, Putin emphasized that Russia is closely cooperating with India. It not only supplies weapons to the east, but also transfers technologies for the shipbuilding, missile, and aviation industries.
And how did you raise them? By
According to analysts from the Institute for the Study of War, such statements indicate the Kremlin's intention to deepen military technical cooperation with India, possibly even to the point of jointly producing strike drones. Thanks to its ally, the Kremlin is likely counting on using these drones in the war against Ukraine in exchange for transferring new technologies and combat experience to India. And
I want it to be clear, the Russian delegation came not only to talk about the issue of energy, not just to place orders and sign contracts for the supply of oil or gas. We want to develop multifaceted relations with India.
the visit of the Smolensk FPV drone piloting center delegation to India put all the cards on the table. It was announced as fulfilling tasks within the framework of the Russian-Indian strategic partnership.
We, as a global community, truly and deeply value India's significant position on numerous important issues. India is the only country with which, by the way, we have never been at war and with which we have no mutual grievances. And we are truly grateful to the Indian side for always consistently responding to our sincere invitations, diligently coming to our joint exercises, and inviting us warmly in return, which is greatly appreciated.
At the same time, Russia is trying to attract as much Indian labor as possible into the country. Deputy Prime Minister Denis Manturov stated that Moscow is ready to accept an unlimited number of migrants from India. As it turned out, because Putin sent a significant portion of the population to war, now Russian industry is short 1.5 million people in trade, construction, and the service sector.
A person from Kherson. As for example, international trade, I want to emphasize that the order has fallen and the Kremlin person, within their sphere of influence, is overseeing the construction. I think we currently have more than 10 available job openings at this moment.
In addition, the Kremlin appointed head of the occupation administration of the Kherson region, Saldo, stated that he too had discussed opportunities for cooperation with Indian representatives.
Businessmen from India, Iran, Nicaragua, and France have shown interest. This is a sign of trust in our land, in its future, and in the determination of the people to build a new, prosperous Kherson region.
Cooperation with Russia is already causing India significant economic losses. Due to purchases of Russian oil and weapons, the US in 2025 raised tariffs on most Indian goods to 50%, including additional tariffs related to energy trade. This hit Indian manufacturers focused on the American market. And after the latest meeting between Modi and Putin, the Indian rupee fell to a record low.
They say that in the past, a yogi could go a year without putting anything in his mouth, but now they're breaking records by eating everything.
India is wary of sanctions, so it intends to reduce imports of Russian oil to their lowest level in 3 years. The largest Indian energy company has already completely stopped purchases, switching to raw materials from Middle Eastern countries and the US.
This is an important event because we have known each other for 25 years.
The media reported that during Putin's visit to Delhi, he planned to discuss the purchase of Russian fighter jets and air defense systems. India also agreed to lease a Russian nuclear attack submarine for 10 years at a cost of $2 billion.
And what do you think about the latest events? Share your opinion in the comments, like the video, and stay up to date with the main news. There is more to come.